Hello, everybody. My name is Sherry Flynn. I am with Agility Recovery. I provide consulting services on business continuities, cyber resilience, and crisis management planning in teams. I have an NBCP in business continuity. I'm certified in cyber resilience, information security, and also a lead implementer for the ISO 22301 standard. Excited to be here today and talk with everybody.
Hi, my name is Greg Tillotson. I'm a Tesla project manager with Agility Recovery Services. Been with the company for a couple of years now. I'm more of a hands-on technician when it comes to disasters and alerts and exercises and testing people's disaster recovery plans and business continuity plans. I have an associate's business continuity planner, and happy to be here and lend some expertise to the conversation.
Today, we're going to be talking about crisis management, which is super relevant because of everything that's going on in the world right now. So there is several terms, as we know, associated to crisis management. And I'm going to throw out some terms, and if both of you can take it wherever you want it on defining these terms, that would be great. So first, I'm going to throw out crisis.
There are many ways that people define a crisis. It's an event. Any type of situation that endangers people's health, their property, their life. It's anything. Could be mass shootings. It could be bad publicity to an organization. So anything that is impacting that organization in that form, I would say, would define a crisis. Greg, would you agree?
I would agree. Anything that impacts day-to-day operations, or my 15-year-old making dinner. That's a crisis as well, but that's a whole other crisis. But yeah, I do agree.
And
I think that we've definitely seen that word change with the pandemic for sure. And I think, as you said, it's really relevant to each situation, to each client, each customer, and each business, how they define the word crisis.
So then what would you call crisis management then? How would you define that?
A lot of crisis management, I think, relies on identifying, planning for resources, anticipating the events that might happen, things that could impact an organization. And Greg, this is really where your role comes in, because the anticipation of events translates into that tabletop exercise, I would imagine.
Very true, very true. The word management in crisis management really is talking about not in the moment, but before the actual crisis occurs, is managing yourself, being prepared, making sure all the resources are aligned, and you are ready if that crisis does occur. And it's very true. And as Sherry said, we do a lot of tabletop exercises where we put you in that role, and you are allowed in a safe environment to walk through that crisis, that particular crisis that we create, and prepare yourself. Is everything aligned properly, the best it can be, for when the crisis hits? So I tell clients, crisis management is a wonderful term, but think of management as in the now, not during the actual event.
Right. And planning for those resources is becoming even more critical, right? With supply chain, and people really need to make sure that they are ready and hope they never have to use those resources they plan for.
I think it's interesting, Sherry, that right now you mentioned that, and the fails that we're seeing across the globe in the supply chain, down to my local Starbucks that doesn't have green tea. And I was talking to the person this past weekend about why. Well, we never planned for having a lack of the supply chain. It's being cut off. We can't get it. I think that I found that fascinating. That wow, that's how. I don't want to say how low it's gone, but that's the level we're seeing the supply chain interrupted because nobody prepared. Nobody ever thought about we'd run out of green tea at my Starbucks.
In that sense, then what would a crisis management team do, and how do you describe a crisis management team?
Well, I think it's a group that collaborates in really a unique way, right? They are not necessarily the people that work on the day-to-day issues. They're people that really have a vision for the organization. And I kind of go back to Greg's Starbucks tea example, I mean, it's a great one. It's per organization, right? So and your organization may not think about things that an organization that has a specific niche really needs to rely on. So that group of folks, they need to be able to execute recovery quickly. They need to think outside of the box. They need to anticipate deal with anticipated events that they know are coming and unanticipated events, similar to what Greg was talking about. But they really do collaborate in a unique way to make them an ideal crisis management team, in my opinion.
I would agree. Teams, it's really important that a crisis management team knows their role. Each individual knows their role on that team. I have done exercises in the past with clients, and I will ask them, do you have a crisis management team? Well, of course we do. But then when you gather those people, you say, well, Sally, you're in communications. I am? She doesn't know her role. So to take it beyond what Sherry said, it's important that people know their roles on that crisis management team. It's not just a title. It's an active role in preparing for that crisis and being qualified for that role. It's it's much like when you get on the airplane. If you don't want to sit in that exit row, you got to tell them, I don't want to sit in that exit row. So if the boss comes and says, we want you on the crisis management team, and you're not prepared or you're not able, then say no, because that's a pretty important role for businesses to be on that team. You are expected to rise above and lead and prepare, as we said, and then when the event happens, you're expected to be managing that event as well and be playing a role in that. And so many times in exercises, we see people say, "Oh, I didn't know that's what I was supposed to do." I think businesses hear they're supposed to do this. They're supposed to have this crisis management team. But when it comes down to it, so many times they really don't know what it is, what team is, what the CMT is supposed to be, and what it's made of. And I think that's a fail in business right now. And that's Sherry's job to get that right.
Yeah, and you bring up an excellent point. It's the team members are so critical, and often organizations check the box and they put on these people because they're in the positions that typically are on this team. Sometimes organizations can really lose sight of critical crisis members that they already have. They might have people in roles that are completely different, but might have crisis military experience. They might bring something to the organization that is different than their job role, but they will be ideal in a crisis. You do need your typical representatives of the facilities and human resource and a communication person, but you also can substitute for what you don't have, right? So you can put advisories on a team. They're only going to work up to the level of training that they've received. So you need people that are good under pressure. They can, and I use collaborate a lot, but they need to be able to know when to not give ideas and simply make sure that they are accepting ideas from every single person that's on the team. So sometimes additional types of training in addition to what the plan entails. Sometimes you may want to provide, communication training and leadership training and things that you can also get from FEMA or the Red Cross or organizations that are similar to that as well. So they can supplement what skills they may not have as far as the team that they are representing.
So Sherry, I have a question for you. When you go in with a client and you're helping them form their crisis management team and you're consulting on that, how do you deal with the team that has, John, and John is the jack of all trades? Now there's a team in theory, but really John is the one-man team and everybody defaults to, well, John knows that. John knows that. John takes care of that. John takes care of that. How do you get away from that? Because I see that a lot in my role on we're dealing with our clients. A lot of times it's that one central person that knows everything, and everybody else is just along for the ride.
Well, unfortunately, the pandemic allowed us to exercise that exact thing, right? So we would be taking John out of his role because maybe John is unavailable at the moment. So you really can do a tabletop to throw it back into your world, Greg. You can do a tabletop. You can do strategic walkthrough exercises. And maybe part of your scenario is that John isn't available by phone, by email, by text at all. And then have people step in and do John's job. So I think that's an excellent question. But the pandemic, we've done a lot of pandemic exercises, and that that executive oversight was part of inject into the scenario.
Very good. I know I did have one client a couple of months ago, and that is what I did. I wrote the person out of the scenario. They won the lottery, and they weren't touching their phone, and it was very difficult at first in the exercise because there was quite a bit of struggle. And then they did come around and they realized, oh, we do know that. They realized what they knew, what they didn't think they knew, I guess, if that makes sense, right? So very good. Very good.
And a lot of it comes into the decisions that they don't want to make because John always makes them, in your example, and they are afraid to make a different decision. So taking him out of the picture and out of the room is sometimes really beneficial.
Very good.
Yes, these exercises pushes them out their comfort zone, and that's what you're trying to do, right?
Yes, exactly.
Business resilience. Who wants to take the definition of business resilience?
Business resilience, really, I like to think of it as the ability to come back, and survive an event, survive something that happened to your business, and you're resilient. You're prepared. You are prepared for it. You can bounce back, if you will, is the term that we use behind the scenes. My team and I, we use it. Are they business resilient? Can they bounce back from the hurricane that just came through and hit the East Coast? We had a lot of panic with clients because hurricanes don't hit Rhode Island. They don't hit the East Coast in Boston and New York. They just don't hit there. So we had a lot of panic. And the big question was, well, we don't know how we'll come back if this takes us offline or destroys our power or takes our building out. So resilience is a great definition there. Can you come back from something that happened? Are you prepared? Do you have a plan? Is there an incident and action plan that can bring you back from that specific incident?
And the big piece of resilience, I think, is it's anything, right? It brings all of the work groups together. It's having the ability to maintain your business operations, regardless of whether it's cyber, whether it's COVID, whether it's loss of a building, or whether it's a weather event. I think that's the key to resilience. Is it doesn't matter what it is. As an organization, you've determined to work together. You know all the same goals, and you're able to accomplish those functions and essential processes.
What trends are you seeing in regards to the pandemic and COVID?
Well, I would say before COVID, it was generating revenue, market share, managing competition, and those high level things that group typically focuses on. After COVID, there are unforeseen roadblocks. We talked about the supply chain a little bit. You don't know what to expect until you see it. Short staff really took on an entirely new definition, right? Short staff used to be 1 or 2 people. Now it's half of the population. The groups responsible for the organization now have to be more focused on health issues and cleaning and things like that, making rapid decisions on operational challenges where they had a luxury of time. Let's get to how we can do improvement and life cycle changes. There is a lot less time after COVID to make decisions that need to be made. So I think the focus and the urgency has changed on decisions that these groups have to make.
I would agree. I think I would also add that COVID was an awakening for a lot of businesses that they weren't quite prepared if something like a pandemic hit. They have come to the forefront of, oh, we need to have a business continuity plan. We need to have a disaster recovery plan. Now they're plugging in the reaction and response to COVID to other areas of crisis. And I think I call it the awakening. Really, it's the awakening of businesses of like we need to test our plan. We need to do an exercise and see if it is true, if it's real. Where are the gaps? Or in some cases I've had this year, we need to create a plan where we will create a tabletop exercise and start building the business continuity plan after that tabletop exercise, because there are so many takeaways, there's so many ahas or gotcha moments. And I think that's a big thing that COVID has created, an urgency to be prepared for the next event that could be coming. Because again, it made people realize that anything can happen at any time. We just don't know.
And I think in the world of crisis management, people really have missed the boat if they are not documenting as things are happening, what's occurring, the lessons that they have learned, the things that have occurred that have become daily procedural things. They have completely missed the boat if they are not documenting it as things to improve on and work through. I think that's a big miss.
I agree. Documentation is so key of any event, crisis, exercise, tests. If you're not writing it down, well, I hope you have that great of a memory. I really do. I don't anymore. And you have to go back to reference it. You know, so many times I work with clients who say, well, we know how to do that. I say, is your muscle memory that strong? What about the other 20 things you have to do? And we see in times of crisis, in times of urgency, failure is greater than success because we're panicked. We just don't remember. We don't remember. But if it's written down, it's easy to pull out that sheet of paper and say, oh, we do A, then we do B, then we do C. And yeah.
Yeah. And that's why those crisis management team members are so critical, because that needs to be somebody's role. Either they delegate it or they do it, but they're responsible for it being done. And that needs to be assigned. Things need to be very clear. It's one thing to plot out a plan for the team. It's another thing to do it, to execute it, to exercise it, to test it, to review it. So those roles really do need assignments, not just people on a team and we'll get to it when we get to it. It really needs to be clearly defined.
I agree. Just because you have the jersey with the name on it doesn't mean you can't. You're just part of the team. You got to actively be part of the team. One of my best questions I ever had asked to me was, how often should we review our BCP plan? What do you think, Sherry? What's your answer to that? How often should a client bring it out?
Well, I think as items occur, right? If you add new services, you add new products, you add new people. I think it's routine. It is what I do, so I think it's routine.
Right.
But I definitely don't. You have contact information change on your most critical contact to a site, and something happens, and you can't contact that person. You'll take it out a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I advise them. I say, anytime it changes, anything changes, you should pull it out, and it's a perfect time to review it. I told them, it's not your smoke detector. You're not just changing the batteries twice a year.
Yeah, right.
What would you recommend to a client building like a crisis management team for the first time? What would be your recommendations?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about it. I think the team is key. I think they need to be sure that if they're a small organization and they, are limited in the number of people, then that one team has to have a strategic responsibility, an operational, a tactical responsibility. If those are different people, then it really needs to be defined specifically. But I think training on how to even declare a disaster, how to call those people, how to get other people involved. I think there's a lot in building the structure of the team, even before exercising takes place.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think you have to define the roles first, and then find the people that have those capabilities to fill those roles. It's not just a name filling a slot, if you will, because somebody said we had to. It's got to be the right person. It's got to be the right person, because in times of crisis, you need the right person, not the person that's going to panic, not the person that can't think.
Mm-hmm.
It can be time consuming, because you've got to spend some time with those people and realize. But again, like Sherry said, if you're a small team, maybe it's easier because you might have a closer relationship with the other people you work with and know, well, this person can fill that role because they have that natural aptitude to do that. Um, it's it but it's valuable. It's valuable to find those roles and put those people in those roles, the right people in those roles.
So, what are the basic things to understand about crisis management teams? And do you think that it's changed at all during COVID, or do you think it's remained constant?
Some basic things about a crisis management team. My big opinion about the members of the team is it's not the same as putting out daily fires. To be on a crisis management team is a different skill set. It isn't small little fires that you put out in your department. You have to have an overall vision for the organization, the ability to make quick decisions, collaborate with people, know when to not give your opinion and take other people's opinion. I mean, there are a lot of basic communication skills that go along with the organization strategic things that happen on a crisis management team. I think that's secondary.
I would agree. I would definitely agree. It's when you're building that crisis management team, the basics, interpersonal communication skills are really, really important. As Sherry said, you have to know when to shut up and listen and hear your team and listen to your team and inject when you need to inject your opinion. Yeah, so many times I've seen the teams that have are built up those, well, they know how to communicate. Well, yes, very loudly, uh, not directly, not effectively. But yeah, and to answer the second part of that, I'll take that right now. COVID has changed everything. Um, it has made the clients that I work more aware of they have to have a crisis management team. And like Sherry said, it's not the day-to-day fires. It's not dealing with conflict within in the office. It's the big picture. It's knowing what the goal is and where things are and how it's going to be managed if it were to happen. And again, so many people were caught off guard. Um, I will never forget the month of March 2020 when myself and my team for Agility were working with, I think we wound up doing over 200 clients and addressing COVID needs right away within a 10-day period, whether it was sending out technology or looking at space or recovery or how are they going to manage it. And honestly, these people had no idea. They were calling looking for advice from us. And my team, we were learning as much as we could about COVID and what was happening, and nobody really knew. I mean, that's the honest truth after the fact. I think the statute of limitations are gone, right? I can say we didn't know what we were doing. But we were doing the best we could with our training and our advice to, number one, calm people down. And then number two was looking for immediate solutions that would help for them. And most of our clients were looking for work from home solutions. How are they going to work from home? Which in hindsight, like Sherry was saying, we documented and reviewed and were just flabbergasted, my favorite word, that people didn't have a work from home strategy, that they didn't know what they would do if suddenly the call center had to all work from home. Well, they don't have headsets, they don't have laptops, they don't have this, they don't have that. And Agility, I'm proud to say Agility works swiftly to help these people get technology and assist them in setting them up to work from home to help them succeed and have business continuity and be resilient.
And a funny story on the practice side and the group collaboration side is when we first started to, all organizations were pretty much home and we were scheduling tabletop exercises. I've had many conversations where they would tell me we couldn't possibly do a tabletop exercise because we can't all be in the same room. Well, at that point, my question was, well, how would you handle an actual disaster or an actual crisis if you're not all in the same room? It's probably a good idea to practice how that would be done. And you see the light bulb go off and it's just a different way to look at things, which has become a normal way to look at things. But something else is going to happen that changes the way people do things. And there really is a value to having people that are flexible, adaptable, and come up with ideas that, other people may think are off the wall, like having a virtual conversation on video. Go figure.
What are the top 3 trends to look out for in the coming next few years?
Anything that is cyber related right now. Do your due diligence. Don't think you're not susceptible to cyber crime of any kind, of any type. It's out there, and you have to be prepared. You just have to be prepared. See, like Sherry has a terrible internet, and I'm thinking that she's probably being hacked right now. And
I'm sorry, I saw that one coming, actually.
So that would be my number one. Sherry, you're up now.
Sorry. My number one would be have somebody that knows how to speak to the public. Have a crisis communication plan. Have a person who is the right person to, number one, come up with the message, and number two, talk the message. If you're an organization that requires public notification and has to speak to the public, it isn't always the CEO who is the best person to put out in front of the group. So you need to find the skill set, even if it's a company that you hire that is a spokesperson, to get your message out clearly. You need to really make sure, because some of the biggest disasters in communication you can just watch on the news when you see them do press conferences. They might have a terrific plan in place, they be doing everything right, and they put someone out there that messes up their message. So I think that is not always a focus, but I think crisis communication, internal communication, and external communication are all different, and crisis communication really needs to be a focus.
I would agree. I think one of the other things that will continue to trend is just being prepared. Right people, right place, have a plan. I think that's again, as we said before, but it's definitely something we've learned from COVID more. It taught us all a lesson. From Sherry, myself, who help clients to be more prepared and helping them, and really going back and reviewing, okay, what were fails, what were successes, and then moving those forward for clients now. And reminding them and helping them be prepared and helping them form the right crisis management team. So when the next thing comes down the line, and we know it's going to, they're a little bit more prepared with our help. I think that's important.
And until the pandemic is completely under control, organizations have to not worry so much about bringing people back to the office or their location, because there's still schools that people have to worry about what to do with their children. There's sick family members, there's quarantine issues. So it's not just about when can you come into the office and schedule your time to work. Until this is under control across the board and people don't have to worry about outside of the office, organizations really need to think about how they're handling return to work.
It was great speaking with you. It was such a great conversation. I learned so much myself, so I know the members will get a lot out of it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for the invite.